Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, gentlemen. So these conversations are for men. So I'm just going to ignore ladies. I'm not going to greet you this morning. I do know that you follow these conversations, but they are really, really just made for men, for fathers, for potential fathers, and also for just for men who are interested in terms of personal development, personal growth, and also understanding how to show up much more better as a father. So an interesting comment that I often get is like, why would you want to speak to men? What qualifies you, or what right do you have to address men? Oh, well, I have 30 years now of experience working with teenagers. I specialize more with teen boys and teen girls, all the teens, but it's been years. So along the years, I found a lot of things, or a lot of situations that I feel fathers should know more about, or situations that I feel fathers are not being empowered more, because when we have the teen camps and the one-on-ones, it's often mothers that come to pick up the kids or to receive feedback, or mothers who ask for more details in terms of how can I do things better. And I find that fathers tend to just hide somewhere and not want to be engaged. But it's changing now. But this is the backdrop or the context of me having these conversations. So this morning, I thought let's tackle the issue of stepdaughters. And my name is Nombeli Sombanga. I didn't introduce myself. My name is Nombeli Sombanga. I was born in the Eastern Cape. I'm based currently in the Eastern Cape, but I work between the Eastern Cape and Johannesburg. And I'll be touching on Cape Town this year in terms of the weekend retreats. So just to get into the conversation, I'm trying to see if I can update all of my platforms with regards to the titles, so that people that join the conversations know what we're talking about. First up, being a father is a gift. Being given the role of being a father is a gift. It's an important gift, one that should not be taken lightly. But also, being a father is a choice, especially if we are going to follow the context of the conversation today, which speaks to stepfathering, and it then becomes a choice. I'm just quickly changing this so that it's done, and then we can go with the conversation. Okay, great. We're here. So, being a father is a gift and also it's a choice. In the African context, in the African language, and also in the African culture or our way of being or our way of doing things, we don't have step parents, stepmom or stepdad. We don't have that language or that mode of being. We don't have it in the African context. And this is something that I've been talking about for the past 5, 6 years, ever since I became a teen coach, just to emphasize that we don't have a step label, inclusive of step kids and or step, whatever step that we have, inclusive of half brothers and half sisters. Those terms came with the English language. We don't create such. We might have certain terms in the half brother half sibling space, but often they, if you listen to those terms, they're often very insultive in tone and also in being, because often they are used to insult the other person. So when it comes to stepfathers and stepmoms, we don't have those terms in African context. The belief and the understanding is that if you are a man who meets a woman who has kids, the ideal or the understanding of the African context is that you are taking on the fatherly role to those kids. And because we're focusing on fathers, I'm just going to focus on that context only and not speak on the mother side of things. So we are speaking on fathers. Wait, someone is just sending me messages. It's distracting. It's distracting. Let me just see. All right. In we don't have stepfathers, and also what it does is the minute we have the step labels where we say to a child, I'm your stepfather, or you're my stepdaughter, what it does is it creates an immediate detachment and emotional disconnect of sorts, because then you're not necessarily my father, you are my stepfather. There's no commitment to it. Same way with your kids. You see them, or they see you as a step. There isn't much of a it creates an emotional detachment. Let me put it that way. It creates an emotional detachment, and also it creates an immediate distance, an emotional distance, because then there's no there is distance. English is just, yeah, and so English namhlanje. But because I'm streaming in different platforms, I want to be able to for everyone to understand me. But the minute kuba call a labeling of the other, it others the other person. You find that also in the first, if you meet a woman who has teens or preteens, and then everyone is calling each other step, you find that it becomes difficult for the family to blend together in the first few months of a family formation, because there's a certain barrier in place, or a certain wall in place that needs to be taken down, and often that wall is the step label. So my advice all the time is to say, remove that label completely in your family context. Also, if you've noticed in other cultures, there is an act of marrying the kids when a couple gets married and they have kids from. For an example, if a man marries a woman who has kids, in some cultures, in the African context, the soon-to-be husband is allowed to marry the kids as well, depending on how those families do that particular practice. This is also to ensure that there is no emotional distance that gets created by this one being a half parent and the other being half kids. So this is why it's done, to ensure that there is fluidity in terms of how this new family is going to form and grow. See, our culture or our elders or our ancestors has always been very wise in terms of how they formed our families. Then the English language came in, and then all the drama came with it as well. So this is why we're having this conversation. So the reason why I'm having this conversation with regards to step daughters and step fathers, I'm going to use those two labels for the sake of this conversation, but within your family context, please find a way around these labels. So the reason why I'm having this conversation is because it comes up quite a lot in my space with regards to teenagers, in terms of teenagers themselves sometimes don't know how to be or how to interact with the new stepfathers that join the family unit. And this is around blended families. Same thing with dads as well. We find that guys or men don't know how to interact with the teens, with the teen daughters once they join a particular family unit. Also, this can happen in a marriage context and also in the fat and set situation where people are staying together but not necessarily married together. But as long as they're kids, often these challenges come to play. So to manage my time, I wrote down notes as that I manage my time so I don't go overboard because I love overboard because I love my work. And let me see. So the challenges that fathers often have are that also they don't know how to interact with teen girls, and also teen girls don't know how to interact with their teen fathers. And one of the biggest challenges that some men have, father who might be lurking in the shadows, the absent father who is not spoken about by the mom or the or children in this particular context, but they know the man or the boyfriend or the new dad knows that there is an absent father situation that's lurking in the shadows and that could potentially destabilize the family unit. And often for some men, and I'm not speaking for all men, and this is based on really my contacts and conversations that I've had with men and teens in my space. The challenge is that sometimes men are afraid of forming a bond with the children of their wives in case the new dad or the absent dad comes over to claim the space in different forms and in different ways. Or the dad doesn't want to invest so much emotionally into a situation where he doesn't know what's going to happen in the long run. So that's one of the challenges. And the only way to handle this challenge, if you're married to the mom or if you're in full partnership, not married, but in agreed upon long-term partnership, please have a conversation about this with your partner. It's necessary. And it's not a conversation of you talking about her ex-boyfriend, because I think once we approach it in that context, it creates all the other stuff, insecurities, and. It needs to be a conversation about partner, you have a daughter or a preteen or a teenager, and you have not spoken about the father of these kids, plus the silent agreement that you might have with them. Silent in the sense that they have not spoken about it, but she had made a decision to move on and completely cutting off or something like that. So there needs to be, so the absent father situation that's lurking in the background or in the shadows, it needs to come to the table. You must have a conversation about it in terms of who is he, what is the story with regards to your breakup, and what is the agreement regarding the children. Is there an agreement in place? Is there a conversation in place? This is necessary because once the absent father situation comes to the fore on its own, it's going it's going to distract everyone in the family. In fact, it might even destroy that whole entire family unit based on how it might play out. So it's necessary before any drama happens, sit with your partner, have a conversation about it. If you are the type of man who married the kids, né? And in that process of marrying the kids, the absent father situation was not spoken about, bring it as well, because what absent fathers are good at is showing up when you least expect them. They will show up. And if you have no clear communication or clear understanding with your partner with regards to what's happening in this story or what's going to happen in this story, it's going to destroy you guys. It's going to destroy you. So my recommendation, please have a conversation about it. And because contexts are highly different, I'm not going to prescribe in terms of how or what you can do in that conversation. If you need, you can call me up and we pay and talk coaching session, but have a conversation about it. and if that conversation comes from a place of love, often you will know how to handle the conversation. Good intentions and a place of love, as long as no one becomes defensive, because the challenge is when one of the people becomes defensive, and then this conversation just goes crazy. So have a conversation about it. Ne? The next point that I wanted to tackle is the other challenge is the adolescent stage. Now, this one can make or break your relationship. If you meet your partner when their child, their teen daughter is over 9, 10, 11, or in fact over 11 years of age to 15 to 16, I promise you, you are going to have challenges. Ne? You are going to have a challenge by virtue of you meeting an adolescent child. That one thing, this is where now fathering or fatherhood becomes a choice. You must consistently make a choice that I'm going to father. I'm going to play the father role or I'm not, because you're also allowed to change your mind. I know mothers won't like this one, but you're allowed to change your mind. I'm going to tell you at the end of this conversation the one situation where you are allowed to change your mind and then exit the relationship. I'm going to tell you just now. So once you meet them at an adolescent stage, you must consistently make a choice to father that teenager. Fathering a teenager then means you father them, you guide them, you protect them, and also you nurture them. It's important, and you have to do this consistently because an adolescent child will challenge you. It happens to biological fathers, it's going to happen to stepfathers as well. They will challenge you. They're always going to be moody, not because sometimes there's anything wrong with them, it's because they're learning these hormonal changes, they're learning their bodies, they're learning how to respond to the changes in their bodies, they're learning to understand the world around them, they're learning to position themselves in a space of influence, and also they're testing the people around them and testing their own powers with relation to persuasion with the people around them. So you are going to have challenges. The most important thing with teenagers and also at this stage, which is I'm going to give you as a solution is one, I'm going to give you one solution for this recording. One is boundaries. Be clear, guys, be clear, guys, be clear, men, be clear about your own boundaries. Be clear. Before you have a conversation with your partner or the kids, be clear about boundaries first. So have a conversation with yourself. Ucho Guti, there are certain things that I'm not going to allow. There are certain things that I cannot allow, or there are certain things that I'm just not going to do, so that it makes it easy for you to then take the conversation to your partner to say, because we are at this stage in our relationship, can we talk about boundaries? And this is what I'm willing to work with. And I'm going to say clearly some of the boundaries. Let me just see. So be clear in okay. So some of the boundaries: be clear about your values with regards to family. Have clear family values. Like, what are you going to teach or guide this family of yours through? Please, please don't go looking for philosophical quotes. Because I find that sometimes men, when we speak about values, family values, you guys are afraid to do the work of sitting down and doing the family values. So have family values clearly marked so that you're able to use these values to guide your family through them. And secondly, be clear about your boundaries around privacy. Be clear, like this must be verbalized also once you've spoken to your partner. Like, do we knock before we open them? How do we use private spaces? Like, how do we use our things and such? So there needs to be clarity around boundaries. I know we like it when stepfathers use their cups and stuff. It becomes a war zone because they have a clear, on their part, teen boys have a clear understanding about their things and their own boundaries. So I really need men to be clear about boundaries around family, around privacy, around Yes, and around discipline, that's the other one. Be clear about discipline. So be clear first about these things, and then the conversation to your partner and say, partner, let's talk about boundaries in this new family, because now we're forming this blended family unit, Angithi. So let's talk. How are we going to handle privacy? How are we going to handle discipline? Like, do you want me to discipline? And also, how do you want me to discipline? And also, how are we going to define discipline in our family unit? And also, if something happens that goes against our family values, how do we correct certain behaviors, because this is going to support you in terms of you knowing how to form this family, or at least have a orientation, or what is it called, Ganja, in English, onboarding your new family. There needs to be certain conversations in place so that it creates a nice foundation for you. Teenagers, by virtue of them being teenagers, they're going to test those boundaries. That one, expect it, they're going to test those boundaries. Hence, you must be clear when those boundaries are tested, how are you going to respond? Are you going to throw your toys around in anger? Are you going to go sit with the boys and drink a lot because you're running away from all of this drama? Or are you going to run away from your home because it's no longer nice being there, because there's always these bickerings and stuff happening? You need to have a conversation way before all of that happens, because it's going to happen by virtue of you walking into a teenage family unit. One of the ones, okay, let me just close this because now I need to just speak off the cuff. So I'm also going to close this in the next 5 minutes. I'm going overboard. So the biggest boundary and the biggest thing that usually happen, and there's a mother who inboxed me to say, I fear dating men because I've got teen girls, and what if they rape my child, or what if they do something? So if you are my age, in your 40s, and you have teen girls, and you're a mom, and as a man you come through in this particular unit, you must have a conversation with your partner, gents, with regards to those fears, because I know for sure that Nani, you have those fears of what if I get accused of something of that sort, because that also quite happened as well. And what I wanted to say is the one space where you have to leave a conversation is when, as a man, you've dated teen girls before. If you've dated teen girls before, and you know that teen girls are your attraction point because you have not yet worked on yourself. This is the core of this conversation. If you have not worked on yourself, if you have not worked on your sexual boundaries, if you've not worked on your self-control, and if you have not worked on just your own moral compass around these things, and you've dated teen girls before, and you meet an older woman who has teen girls, and you get sexually attracted to that teen girl, do not date or marry that woman. Let it go. South Africa has a high rate of rape, mostly with teens, and often it's with individuals that the teens know very, very well. It doesn't help that teen girls are highly impressionable at a certain stage, and they are also at a stage where they're testing their sexual boundaries as well. And they are very impressionable. And also, they've just discovered new boobs and new bums. So they're always doing this, which is fine because that's who they are. That's a normal process of growing up for a teen girl. Nothing wrong with it. But if you, as the older person in this setup, you don't know how to interact with that because your own boundaries and your own urges are not properly managed, leave that relationship completely. Leave, because it's going to test you, and you're bound to do something that's gonna put the child in danger. And I'm saying this on purpose, because then but what's the need for them to leave? Why not work on things? They must live and work on things away from the kids, because these are things that we don't talk about because we're afraid, and also these are things that men would not say to partners could actually, when I'm not around, she tests me sexually. And therefore, I know how to respond to that. I work with teen girls. We had a conversation with my team over the weekend how teen girls are always pushing them to other thing to men and also just testing their boundaries. This is just a normal stage of being a teen girl. But it doesn't help when there is a man in the house that this teen girl might also see in a particular way. This happens more often when the age group of the men and the teen is also not that far apart in cases where we date about Ben 10s, but also it happens with older men as well. Hence, I'm saying if you know that as a man, because this conversation is directed at men, if you know that you have not truly worked on your sexual urges as yet, and you know that your boundaries are horrible in relations to teen girls because you've dated them before, and you meet this partner and their teen girls test you, and you know, Guti, you're not okay, and you need more work around you. My recommendation, guys, and ladies, I know you won't like this, but my recommendation, guys, leave that relationship completely. Leave it, because at some point you're gonna come across a situation where you will act on those urges if you have not worked on yourself. Or what could work the most is for those who are in fight and set relationships, date separately and stay in places, but seek help for it. Because we can't always say just run away. You can run away, but seek help so that you're able to manage your sexual urges in a point. One of the things that we don't talk about in this era or this generation is the value of self-control. And I find that even in the church context where I got that lesson from, that conversation around self-control, it needs to happen more, because you have a decision at any point to control your urges. But if you're a person who's been in a space where you've never learned self-control, it's not going to be something that you win over just by you having teen girls around. It's going to be a problem. So go to places where you can seek help, separate in terms of your living arrangements. And I know this might not be a conversation that you might take to your partner, because your partner, the female, might not know how to handle a situation where you say, listen, this Mjolo is not working because your teen daughter is testing me. Most women are not open to receiving that feedback. They are not. They're just not open to receiving that feedback unless you meet someone who's quite unique who's able to, but often they are not. There's a mom who asked, so I've got teen girls and I'm afraid to date because they're older, and I'm afraid that something sexual might happen. Well, I'm not an expert in relationships, but I know teens, and I know that it's going to be a challenge either way. Maybe we need to talk about a conversation that says, if our kids are older, do we have to get married? That's a long conversation that I'm leaving with you. Let's talk about it. If the kids are older and we have our own different houses, do we really have to get married? Or what kind of setup can be created in this family unit that is trying to blend itself in a way that's going to be safe for everyone? Or if this man has a horrible sexual history that is inclusive of molestation, but they've never spoken to you about, and you want to know, how can you handle a situation where something like that comes up in the family? And I'm not making conclusions here, I'm just asking open-ended questions to say, when it comes to blending families with teenagers, there needs to be clear and uncomfortable conversations that come into the fore. Let me check comments before I continue. Hi, Queen. Fat and set is rough. Try cohabiting. It's the English, Queen. The English just ran away completely. I'm struggling with finding the right English words today. So please excuse me. I'm finding it hard to find. Yeah. So Usongezile is asking, what happens when the other father is still involved in the child's life? Great question. Great question, Songezile. So this is based on the interactions I have with teens. I find that when the other father is completely absent in life, is present in the teen girl's life, often the men are afraid to face each other. because what could solve a lot of the dramas is the two men facing each other and having an amicable conversation about how can we support this child better together as the father. The one is the stepfather, the other one is the biological father. I find that men run away from the conversation, or facing each other. Often the one who is the biological father, ego gets in the way, guys. Ego gets in the way because now this man has married your ex-girlfriend, and then ego gets in the way. The only way, or the most easiest way for this to be fluid and easy, is for the two dads to have a conversation. Because then what tends to happen is that the biological father speaks to the biological mom. The biological mom then speaks to the stepdad. The stepdad sometimes doesn't like some of the arrangements that the biological father is doing, which then creates a problem within the family unit. An example in point, the stepdad and the mom have planned a holiday that includes all the kids. The biological father is still ego based in terms of his approach. He doesn't want the child to bond with the stepdad, and therefore he creates a drama where he takes the other child away from this holiday that is planned. Purely sometimes just ego trips, and then it just creates a lot of drama. What often happens, also Songezile, with teen girls, even boys as well, is that teens will always be stuck in wanting to be close or understand the stepdad, but also wanting to be loyal to the biological dad. That's the challenge that they have. And that loyalty sometimes comes with guilt, because they also understand Ukuti, sometimes the biological dad has been absent for the longest time and it's just forming the relationship anew, and therefore the child wants to have that validation from the biological father. But at the same time, the stepdad is cool and nice, and also she wants to build a friendship with the stepdad. So it becomes a space of loyalty. Again, it requires the dads to have a conversation. I've seen a lot of comments on social media where I see a lot of men comment like they're against that type of conversation because man to man or ego to ego kind of comes in place. But challenging men to say, truly, if you want to have happy children and a happy home, both sides have open conversations about this thing. It really should be that easy, and we should be moving away from this toxic space where we say, "Singane zam," biological dad, "Singane zam lazy," and have an amicable conversation so that it minimizes conflict between you and your partner, because then the wife or the biological mom gets caught in between because this other one is playing toss up with the other. So yes, that's one of the ways to handle it, Sonizile. Let me just check at my page to see if there's any questions there. Let me just quickly move to my page. Okay, perfect. No other conversation. This is long. I've reached 33 minutes. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I'm going to see, let me just see if I covered everything. I don't want to leave out everything. The other question that I want to leave, I think, then with mothers, because I know they're following this conversation. I would like to know your experiences in this, because then it's going to expand my conversation, the next conversation for stepdads. But what I want to say is, please always be open to conversations as well. Please try and minimize your defensiveness, because we become defensive sometimes all the time when these conversations come to play. When a man asks about your teen, also that's the other thing about privacy. Sometimes it can be inclusive of someone walking around naked, and let's be honest. If your teen is 16 years of age and your man just joined the family unit, that your child is a stranger at this point and not his child as yet. And therefore, when he requests certain boundaries around privacy, sometimes it's not because he's seeing your child in a sexual manner. It's just that everyone is new, and you still have to form a relationship first before you can reprimand and discipline. And I think that's the thing. Maybe I should talk more about discipline on in the next conversations. How do we bring in discipline in a blended family unit where there's a stepdad and stepdaughters and stepsons? That's going to be for the next conversation. Thank you so much for listening. You can comment with your questions. I will still check your comments later on and follow suit. Thank you so much, and please have a wonderful day.